Don't you dare. Okay, so Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Already.
Okay, so we have a small service today. A glass of wine or water. Even the here we go. So there is an organization in Israel called Lev Haolam. It means the heart of the world. So I'm going to talk a bit louder to make sure they can catch it. So and it's an organization that that helps little businesses in Judea and Samaria, little Jewish businesses of Israeli settlers of Judea and Samaria. This is some of the most contested areas in the world. So the way it works is that you send $99 a month, and every month they send you a package with all kind of Israeli goodies. Sometimes there is kalua, sometimes there is a little bottle of wine and a book, and there's, I mean, it's really worth it. I think is more worth in there than the $99. And personally, I feel good to help those settlers. Now, I'm not saying all that in order to make a plug for it. My point is, we got our package I think yesterday or 2 days ago, and in it there was some Jewish prayer cards, not Jewish, Israeli prayer card, yeah, with all kind of subjects, So I'm gonna ask Enrico here to come choose one. Can you read it really loud and clear? Yeah, loud and clear, because they're gonna hear you in India. So here, no, I don't choose for you. You choose one. Here we go. And you read it really loud and clear. Here you go.
Bless me with peace, King of peace. Place peace in my heart, and grant me peace with all that surrounds me. Let me merit to connect and not to separate, and be a vessel that holds blessing.
Amen. That was beautiful. Thank you, Enrico. Put you on the spot there, huh? Very good. See, it comes in a little bag.
Beautiful.
Tefillot.
And what's on the back?
Clafe tefillot. Clafe tefillah.
And what did it
Prayer
look like with the
cards.
picture on the back side?
On that, I don't know. I just mixed it, so I don't know what it was. The picture. There's all kind of pictures. You can look at them.
Different pictures.
So here we go. Then back in there,
Instructions.
the instructions, they say, pick a card and read it. Okay, so let's start with the song.
Instructions. Say, pick card, read it.
Blessed are you, O Lord our God, eternity's holy King. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, who brings on the evening. Baruch hu et Adonai, Hamevorach, Leolam Vaed. Baruch hu et Adonai, Hamevorach, Leolam Vaed. By wisdom, O Lord, heaven gates open up. With understanding, you order the seasons, creating day and night, turning darkness into light, arranging the stars to your pleasing. Baruch hu et Adonai, Hamevorach, Leolam. Baruch hu et Adonai, Hamevorach, Leolam. Let's lie, lie, lie. Oh, lie, 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 Blessed be the King, to the Holy One we sing. Lord of hosts is your name. Ever living God through all the rest, now and forever the same. God of hosts with Adonai, Blessed be the King. Blessed be the King. To the Holy One we sing. Lord of hosts is your name. Oh, ever living God, through all the earth, now and forever the same. Baruch Adonai, oh, Baruch Baruch et Adonai, bless the Lord. Baruch is the imperative form. Bless as a command. Bless the Lord, Amvora, the eternal God, forever and ever. Amen. Let's see. What song shall we do? I would like to do.
What is Yom Zeh? Israel? What does it mean? What does it mean?
Yom Zeh Israel. This day. This is the day.
For Israel?
Yeah. This
Korach, Besimcha, we should be happy and
light and joy.
and-
Light and joy and Shabbat of rest. Can you
Okay.
take this down?
Well, I don't know what you did. So this is because it's trying to edit. That's
Okay.
okay. Ready, go.
So Yom Zeh Israel. This is the day for Israel of light and rejoicing and a restful Shabbat. Yom Zeh Israel, Oav Simcha, Shabbat Menucha. Yom Zeh Israel, Oav Simcha, Shabbat Menucha. This day our striving. Yom Zeh Israel, Oav Simcha, Shabbat Menucha. Yom Zeh Israel, Oav Simcha, Shabbat Menucha. Again. Yom Zeh Israel, Oav Simcha, Shabbat Menucha. Yom Zeh לישראל, אורה ושמחה, שבת מנוחה. This day we will honor your name. This day you remove all our shame. Blessed are the meek and gentle, they shall own the land. Blessed are the righteous ones, they'll be satisfied. Blessed is the Lord our God. Blessed are the ones who take refuge in His name. Yom Zeh Israel, Torah v'simcha, Shabbat menicha. 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 This, here. Let this day be a sanctuary in time. This day proclaim God is true to His name. It's a taste of the best of wine. Yom Zeh Israel, Orah v'simcha, Shabbat menucha. 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 This day as we all gather near, this day, Lord, our message is so clear. Blessed are the merciful, they will have your mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, they'll see you face to face. Blessed is the Lord our God. Blessed are the ones who take refuge in His name. Yom Zeh Israel, Torah v'simcha, Shabbat menucha. 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 Amen.
I'm not singing.
Okay, so because this morning I had time to pick up a book and read something from a never-ending library of books I'm planning to read sometime. So I read an article that was really nice. So it's got nothing to do really with the parasha, but I'm trying to do a lot of learning, studies, and on the life of the disciples, the first century disciples. It's really important. They were actually the first church, the first congregation. It didn't start in Greece. It didn't start in Rome. It started in Jerusalem with those disciples of Yeshua. And I feel in the Messianic movement, that's what we are trying to reenact. And it takes a lot of digging. We're like archaeologists. It's like, and sometimes, maybe, if you're an archaeologist, you're going to take off the rubbles and stuff, and then you're going to start seeing the wall of a building. So, oh, there is a square building. That must be a bedroom. That was something. And you start, and you start making a plan. Okay, it's like this. Oh, and it's that deep. Okay, well, that's, and you think you have a cube. And all of a sudden, as you keep digging, you find another platform, and it goes down more. Oh, boy. How wrong was I? Scrap that plan. This is like the top of a building. It's a big house. So it's a little bit like this. We discover as we go. Like some people say, oh, the people sometimes they think it's this when they're in error. No, they're not necessarily in error. It takes time to figure it all out. The whole thing has been buried. And in the 20th century, actually it started really in the end of the 19th century, the Messianic movement has grown by leaps and bounds. Was very there was a big peak of it in 1967 after the 6-Day War, and now with the age of the internet, so much more information is so much more easily accessible. So we're learning and we're learning and we're learning and we're learning, and it's great. I think it's awesome to see. So from Torah Club there is 6 volumes. So and the sixth one is Chronicles of the Apostles. It's the Book of Acts. It's the Book of Acts. So and each volume has 5 volumes, but this one has a 6th one, which is a lot of extra letters from what's called in religious terms, in Christian terms, patristic literature. Like literature, which means a lot of stuff from the early believers. So if you watch actually The Chosen, the first episode of the 2nd season shows us John and Matthew starting to keep track of stuff, And sad to say, today we really don't have much of this. We have a Hebrew Matthew. I have a copy of it, but that's all. The rest is all fragments of things that have been put together, and we have it in Greek too. We have fragments. It's been really put together well, But the only reason why we have the Matthew one is because I think the 2nd century AD, a rabbi who was really active against the Jewish believers wanted to help other rabbis identify the followers of Yeshua in his congregation. So he kept a copy of Hebrew Matthew to share, to show, okay, that's what they believe. And he even said that you'll recognize them because at Passover, they celebrate the death and resurrection of their leader, and at Sukkot, they celebrate his birth. So you recognize them. And then he would share this Hebrew Matthew. So it's been kept within the Jewish world for a long time as a document, heretical document to help them identify heresy. Of course, heresy in their eyes, And then, I don't have all the dates, but during the 20th century, somebody found it. It came into the hands of people. So, and it's in a book you can buy. It's quite interesting to have this available. So I wanted to just read something and share some information. It's not very long. Promise not to fill it up with too many commentaries. So, and it's a bit of a study. Going to learn some names of patristic literature from patriarchs of the early, what's called early church. They're called the church fathers, patristic, the church fathers, and many of them, some of them, were actually either disciples of the disciples, like Polycarp. I don't know if you heard the name Polycarp. Polycarp was a disciple of John. And so they were either disciples of the disciples or disciples of the disciples of the disciples. So these people have real information. So here's how it goes, this one.
Polycarp was martyred, wasn't he?
Yes, Polycarp actually is the guy who was put in a cauldron of fire. They tried to boil his teacher, John, in oil. Polycarp with fire. And according to legend, you can read in Fox's Book of Martyrs, actually. Fox's Book of Martyrs. Fire went around. Fire went around him, and he was not burned. And so it's quite interesting, all this stuff, So there is one, though. His name was Papias. Can you say Papias? Not papaya, Papias. It's in Papias.
Say it again.
Papias.
No, spell it again.
Papias.
It's not papyrus.
No, Papias here.
Papyrus.
It could be Papias. I don't know.
Not Papa.
His girlfriend, oh, well.
So, and
He was a disciple of.
well, it's going to explain here, but he actually had written 5 books. He was a disciple, I think, of John. I think, maybe making a mistake. He had written 5 books, and these 5 books were full of the teachings of the disciples, teaching the things they did, the things they saw, the things they heard, things they learned, quotations from Yeshua, all kinds of stuff. Somehow these books have been lost, and here this explains why. Okay, so sit down, relax, have a drink. I'm gonna have this is water, I promise. And the bishop of Papias presided over the Christians.
He was a bishop?
Yeah, bishop.
Okay.
A bishop is basically a leader, congregation leader. It's not like today it's a position in Catholic Church, but there were no Catholics in those days. There was only Jews belonging to a sect. So he was a bishop, the leader, over the Christians. Now, the first people to be called Christians were the believers from Antioch of Syria. These were the first people who were called Christians, which means follower of a Christ, Messiah. It's really, the word Christians uses the Greek word Christos, which is the same thing as Messianic, really. Messianic uses the Hebrew version, Messiah, Mashiach. So, and in Hebrew, Mashiach. So, but the first people who were called Christians were the disciples, non-Jewish disciples in Antioch, Syria. We see that in the book of Acts. So he presided over the Christians in Hierapolis. The city of Hierapolis was situated near Laodicea and Colossia in the Lycus River valley of Phrygia. All this is in Turkey, in Western Turkey. Today, the city is known as Pamukkale, Turkey. So we recognize the name Laodicea. We have it in Revelation 3. Colossia, we have a book. So he was the guy over this area. Papias was a bishop during the reign of Emperor Trajan. He had a tragic reign. In 98, from 98 till 117, believers had been congregating in Hierapolis since the days of the ministry of the Apostle Paul. In Colossians 4:12-13, Paul mentions struggling for the believers in Colossae, Laodicea, and Hierapolis. By the time of Papias, there were difficult struggles for believers everywhere in those days. The Yeshua movement was undergoing a painful transformation. A sharp division between the Jewish believers and the emerging Gentile church was already in place. As the writings of Ignatius of Antioch demonstrate, so Ignatius is another one of these church fathers who talked a lot about what was happening. As his writings demonstrate, Gentile Christians already identified themselves as in antithesis to Judaism and the Torah. So that was already by the time of Papias, who was a direct disciple of one of the disciples. So, and we see that in Revelation 3, where Yeshua, through John, tells the Philadelphian community, I know what you have suffered at the hand of those who call themselves Jews but are not. Those were non-Jews, like it says, they are not Jews. Yeshua doesn't use sarcasm or says it straight. Non-Jews who, because of their belief in Yeshua and Israel's national stand against Yeshua, thought, we're the true Jews, you're not.
Gentiles were saying that?
Yes. So already by the beginning of the 2nd century, there was Gentile Christians already identified themselves in antithesis to Judaism and Torah. Though Jewish believers in Yeshua were still active at that time, the original voices of the apostolic community had all but vanished with Gentile Christianity. Church legend claims that in the early day of Emperor Trajan, in 98 CE, the end of the 1st century, John the Apostle, the last survivor of the 12 disciples, died in Ephesus. Can you imagine being the last person in the world to have heard and seen Jesus crucified and resurrected? Oh boy. Jewish believers in Jerusalem continued under the leadership of Shimon bar Chalfi, a cousin of the Master. The leadership first went to James, his brother, then to Shimon, the son of Chalfi. And he's the one actually who saw the sign in the heaven, and where the one where Yeshua says, when you see armies surrounding Jerusalem, then flee. He's the one who saw that sign and ordered the evacuation of the Messianic believers to a place called Pella, P-E-L-L-A. And you can even look at the history if you type flight to Pella. There's a whole lot of stuff about that. So he's the one who saw that. So, and Shimon was a cousin. So they were keeping the leadership. They were keeping the leadership within the line of Yeshua, because it's got to stay within Judea, the Davidic line. You know, it's got to come. It's got to continue through the Davidic line. So, Jewish followers of the Master identified themselves with names like Nazarene, remained faithful to Torah and to the practice of Judaism. But sad to say, the early church fathers, Nazarenes and Ebionites, received a mention in patristic literature outside of Judaism, and the chief heresy most often ascribed to them was that of keeping the Torah. So when the early church fathers talk about them, it's as heretics within the church. Heresy because they keep the Torah, because they eat kosher, because they do circumcision and all that. So now, Nazarene, we understand. Nazarene because he's from Nazareth. Ebionite, Evion, which is not water, no. Evion, Evion. And it means the poor ones. The poor ones. If you remember, in Acts 15, James start telling people what should be expected of the Gentile congregation. He said, we're not going to bother them with all the stuff that we, just keep them, and to not forget the poor. Most people read that as doing acts of charity, but actually Ebionite, the poor ones, was the name of the believer sect. It was a name attributed to them because after they gave up all their possessions in order to stop the congregation in Acts 2, they never recovered. So they were always, and I think it's quite something, without them doing that. So between the two. Papias, the bishop of Hierapolis, recognized the tragedy of the vanishing apostolic voice. He said, oh boy, this is not good. He did his best to preserve all tradition of the apostolic community of Jewish believers. Like their contemporaries in Greater Judaism, the Jewish believers passed on their teachings, traditions, and lore primarily via oral transmission. It was through the word, oral, verbal transmission. The teacher-disciple relationship that defined Yeshua and his 12 disciples was a venue designed for the oral transmission of teaching. Fortunately for us, a great deal of the Master's teaching and narratives about his life were committed to parchment. Many other things which Yeshua did, which if they were written in. So we can imagine that even when we read, maybe we only see that little top of a house, but there is much more in there. Maybe all we know is really the tip of the iceberg, and there's much more that we don't know. Okay. While serving as Bishop of Hierapolis, Papias set to work collecting oral traditions of the apostolic community. He arranged them into 5 volumes called An Exposition of the Sayings of the Master. Can you imagine if we had those today?
Wow.
Ooh. Some scholars have suggested that he chose to divide the work across 5 books to reflect the Torah's division in 5 books. Papias described his process for gathering apostolic tradition in the introduction of his work, saying, I want to skip some so that it doesn't get too long.
Paraphrasing?
Now, would the Didache been before that? Before those 5 volumes?
The Didache,
That's what the disciples
it
used to
seems
say.
like it, yeah. The Didache, that's a good one to mention. The Didache was written by the disciples as a manual for starting congregations. So Papias, he gained information from travelers. He did his research, and he may have heard the Apostle John firsthand. And there is another guy called Irenaeus who totally hated Papias's guts.
What's his name? How do you spell it?
Irenaeus. Irenaeus. And Irenaeus didn't like Papias because Papias brought a lot of the Jewish tradition into his text. So we know something from Papias because Irenaeus quotes it as, listen to that, this is wrong. So this is how we have information. So even when somebody does something bad, there's something used from, like they say, even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Well, kind of like Josephus too, right?
Yeah.
Because he wasn't really on the side of everything he was writing about.
Yeah.
He like turned,
Exactly.
but his really,
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of detail in it.
So Papias also makes mention of two otherwise unknown disciples of Yeshua, who were apparently still alive in his day. The names are Aristion and an apostle known as John the Elder. John the Elder is not the John of son of Zebedee, but another disciple with the same name. Eusebius is another guy who wrote ecclesiastical history. Now I have that book, and it's really good. He wrote a lot about the life of the disciples as they left on their mission. They left Israel. They left Israel on their mission. And the fact that they left Israel, here they believed, you gotta understand what it means they left Israel. Jewish religion is very much about ceremonial purity. Even in Israel, they don't go into the house of a Roman, nor Samaritan, nor Canaanite. It's impure. Now, Yeshua asked them to go to a totally impure world. And on top of that, they all worship idols. They can't go anywhere without seeing idols. That should tell us something. That it doesn't expect us to stay cozy in our little place. If our fellowship together doesn't cause us to reach out, for 3 years he trained them to think, but then now you go. That's what we're supposed to do, to be a witness to the world.
Cottonwood seeds.
Was that?
Like cottonwood seeds.
Yes, that's right.
Well, it's kind of interesting to make the connection. They were being ruled by Rome, and we learn about all of the Roman gods, but they seem so far in distance for us, like it was a fairy tale type of a thing. But that was completely what everybody was worshiping and observing. They were being ruled by the Romans, who worshipped all those gods at that time.
Yeah, and I watched one time a little documentary from, do you know Vanderland? I forgot the first name. Vanderland. He's a teacher. He takes people to Israel and he teaches the Bible on the land. Whenever I watch him, I say, wow, that's what I would like to do, And but he's got very good stuff, and he also takes people to Turkey, to Western Turkey and Eastern Greece, where the 7 churches were around the Aegean Sea, and he shows them archaeological finds. And at one point, I really like that one. He called this episode a counterculture, Christianity a counterculture. And what he was showing them was that through the excavation, he could see the house of believers. Okay, you could see a house of believers. They could see a menorah carved in the stone at the entrance of the door, giving them their identity. Then they could recognize the room where they got together for congregation. Like, we read in epistles, say hello to the house of so-and-so and to the house. Those houses were hubs where people came. It was a house of somebody, but there were hubs where people came. And he could see there was the seats around, and in the front over there, facing east, there would be a little enclave, alcove or something. That would be the place where the Torah, the Sefer Torah, where the books were, and he could see. And then he goes on this way, and here you had these people in this community being a light in the middle of darkness. And how were they a light? These people were poor. As soon as you renounced the God of the land, if you were a Jew, as soon as you renounced, you took fellowship, you took discipleship to Yeshua, you were rejected by the Jewish community. And if you were a Gentile, as soon as you renounced the gods of your ancestors in order to take this Jewish thing, monotheism, you were rejected. And if you were rejected in those places, here you can, nowadays, you can do whatever religion you want to do. You can still do business, you can still go to school, you can still live your life. But in those places, in those days, everything was religious. Before, if you make pots, and let's say you're going to want to sell them at what's called the Agora, which is the ancient supermarket, not supermarket, the mall, the mall where they had all kinds of stores in one place. And when you came, you came with your pots that you made, and you came to the Agora leader, he had a chair somewhere, and by him there was a little altar, and he would say, "Hey, Mr. Cohen, it's really good. You got your pot, nice quality pot. We'd love to have you part of our Agora." "Oh, thank you, thank you." "Well, just take a little bit of ashes here and say thank you to Zeus."
And say, thank you.
"But I can't do that. I don't believe I'd be." You guys, "Oh, well, if you can't do that, you can't be part of our Agora. And you might actually bring the anger of Zeus upon us." So whenever you did that, discipleship to Yeshua meant economic suicide, bankruptcy, maybe. Also, every meeting, council meeting, and everything, it always started with a little, "Oh, here, put a little ashes for Athena to bless our meeting." "Oh, but I can't do that." "Oh, well, you cannot take part of our civic conversation. Athena will get angry." So basically, you lost everything. So these people, when that happens, communities kind of support each other. That's the way it should be, right? Support each other. And you have these communities who stayed alive. It's in history that the more they were persecuted, the more they grew. It's amazing. And wonder why sometime, but I remember one time I was in Bangladesh. Was it Philippines? No, I think it's Bangladesh, for somewhere. And I got up from the bed and there was a big spider like this on the floor.
That was Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, a big spider.
Was it like a tarantula that big?
No, it was not
Bigger than that.
It was not a hairy one.
They're
Was it
just
bigger than
they're,
that?
they're big. Yeah, you shake them out of your shoes when you go there.
You shake your shoes or your slippers before you. I tell you.
You wear flip flops, and you don't have to worry about it.
So, but there was a big. So,
spider.
and I was going to put my shoe to it, and the guy said, "No." She could be pregnant. I said, "Oh, you don't want to hurt a pregnant spider?" No, it's not that, of course. Then you'd have plenty, thousands of baby spiders going around everywhere. You never find them, So to me, I look at it like, how come the disciples, the more they were persecuted and executed, the more they grew? Because they were all pregnant with the word.
Pregnant.
They're pregnant with the concept that, and their death became actually a spreading. I don't know. It's a little analogy.
Are you comparing the disciples to spiders?
Yeah,
No.
why not? But good spiders. Good spiders. Go. Oh, I lost my page now, you bad dog. But
She gave you a kiss.
Heidi. What
only my
did you,
wife does that.
do you know what? I think it's because you clap your hands.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So
Is it almost 6 o'clock?
yeah, almost. So anyway, so
No.
so this is so how were these people alive to the world? The way they were living is they had created, because of the teachings of Yeshua, they had created a classless society. Roman society was very class conscious and race conscious. The top of the line was to be a Roman from Rome. Then you could be a Roman who's not from Rome but bought your status. And you were not always accepted in the very high elitist Roman class, but in the movie Ben-Hur was given Roman citizenship for saving a centurion. Then he became part of that house. So, and then there was what they called the barbarians, the other people. And within the other people, if you were not a Roman, you had, even within Roman society, you had classes. You have the equestrians, you have the patricians, you have all kinds of classes, societies. And then, of course, you had the soldiers, the businessmen, and the slaves.
Serfs.
Servants and slaves. Serfs, yeah. So you had all that stuff. And in Roman society, they don't meet. And they certainly do not eat together. If they meet, they meet within class concern, but they don't eat together. You only eat with people you love. Come on, you do that. So, but with the believers, all of a sudden, a slave would eat sitting down at the table or reclining, with maybe a patrician or an equestrian, higher class, bringing him food, just because he's a brother. And they created a classless society where everybody was brothers and sisters, and that created a counterculture to the Roman thing, but that made them the light of the world. That made the way they lived became their testimony, and that's how it should be. The way we live should be our testimony. I'll share with you another story I'm very proud of. Christina and I, we used to go to the streets of Portland. The homeless problem was not at this point like it is right now, but it was mostly a summer thing. The homeless problem. It was but for 10 years we took care of
And
homeless.
only downtown.
Only downtown, yeah. For 10 years we ministered to homeless in Portland. We used to actually go. We had some young people with us that you would train to work with us. We would take our van and go, and we had some literature, take a guitar and sing to them and blah blah blah, and then invite them to the house for dinner. We had a car, a van, we'd fill up everything. All those who wanted to come. Christina and somebody would prepare some home food. Sometimes we let them take a shower. She'd give them haircuts. It's like,
You could even do a punk thing.
it's like mohawks and stuff.
Yeah, I knew how to do that.
Yeah, and then we'd feed them at our table. Not you eat and we serve you. No, we ate with them, and our children ate with them too. Iman could tell you stories. He loved it when we brought people. It was very popular. And then we'd go sit in the living room, and we'd tell. I would give a Bible story. I would not sit down and give a sermon. I would say, well, and here there was John and James. They were going to Samaria. So who wants to be John? Who wants to be James? Okay, and two would get up and they would go. You're going to Samaria, and then you approach a city, and there's this man out there carrying a bag, and so you be that man, and had them act it out. And
Does it remind you guys of something like we do at Hanukkah and
so we did that, and afterwards, so everybody had fun, and in the end, I drew a little conclusion that had to do with something I wanted to address. Because before that, I had talked with quite a few of them, so I was a bit aware about it. So we did that. One time we went and there was nobody out there. Maybe it was bad weather. But I did bring one guy. So okay, one guy. He came, and he was a street guy, where I think we let him take a shower, and uh, and he had dinner with us. Just one guy. The guy, I don't force myself on people, so I didn't know how much Bible he would want to talk about, but we just were nice, friendly. He knew what we were doing, and we fed him and let him take a shower and everything, and we just had a nice conversation, talked about who he was, what he was doing, where he was from, blah blah blah. And then in the evening he had to go back because he was sleeping at the mission, and they needed to be there at a certain time. And when he left, and I'm going to use a bad word, okay, because I want to repeat what he said, but I don't use this bad word, or maybe I'll do the first two letters.
Yeah.
Okay, so he said, well, you know I don't know all about this God, but if there is one, I think I felt him tonight. Oh, that almost made me cry. You know, that almost made me cry because that's how we should live our life. People see us, fellowship with us. If there is a God, I think I felt him. But just being there, don't have to give big sermon. So, and that's these people. That's what they were doing. So now I totally lost the track of my story. Okay, so uh, so by the time of Eusebius,
Heidi, stay here. Step, Heidi.
by the age of Eusebius, which was third or fourth century, the belief in a literal thousand-year reign of the Messiah Yeshua on earth was considered to be Jewish foolishness.
One was Eusebius, what year?
Third century AD. Third or fourth.
Heidi.
You can find yourself, third or fourth. So it's really important. It's like we've traveled a lot, Christina and I. When you travel somewhere, what do? You learn about, when you're going to live somewhere, you learn about the country. Try to learn a few words of the language. Try to learn the culture, how people dress. But if
Heidi, she can't help herself.
sorry.
Come here.
So it's the same thing. We are living here in preparation for living in what's called the millennium, the physical kingdom of God on earth. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. The physical kingdom of God on earth, ruled by Yeshua. That's what we're preparing. That's why we're learning about the Torah. That's what we're learning about the not just the do's and don'ts of daily life, but Torah justice, Torah judgment, Torah ethics, Torah business, Torah everything. We're preparing for that next age. We're preparing for that. Paul says, don't you know you're going to be judging angels? We have to learn about. He says in 1 Corinthians 5, he says, here you guys, you have problems within your congregation, but instead of judging it yourself, you go to worldly lawyers. That's to your shame. You don't have people in your congregation you can take care of your daily judicial business. That's bad. He says, don't you know you're going to be judging angels? We're going to be helping Yeshua with the government. So we're in training by learning Torah all the time, learning justice, learning Torah ethics, learning Torah integrity. That's what we're doing. We're learning for our next job. But in those days, this belief in a literal kingdom was considered Jewish foolishness. By then, churchmen had spiritualized and allegorized the prophecies of the Messianic era. Most Christians no longer believed in a literal Messianic kingdom on earth. More than that, the laws of Torah had come to be regarded as figurative language, not to be taken literally. So that's really,
They're gonna go.
yeah.
Bye-bye.
So, bye-bye. להתראות.
Lito. Mazel tov, Rico.
נסיעה טובה. Some people are leaving.
Bye.
I guess we could end here. But today, that's what we're doing in our learning the Torah. We're preparing for our job of the future to rule and reign with Yeshua. Now I'm going to ask one quiz question. It says in the Bible, I will tell you which book. In Revelation, it says, who are those people who are going to rule and reign with Yeshua?
The martyrs.
Yes. The martyrs, those who were beheaded for the sake of the word of God. So,
Uh-oh.
if
I don't know if I
you
want to go there.
if you lose your head in this world, you get to be the head in the next. Well, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Keep learning Torah. Yes, sir.
So why would angels need to be judged?
Yeah, well,
That's a good question.
that's a good question. Why would angels need to be judged?
Just like Lucifer and all the ones that went with him.
Yeah.
They evidently have
They
a
have
choice.
they have free will, they have a choice, and they need to be judged. And maybe it does say that the angels who in the book of Enoch, the angels who fell with Lucifer, the angels who came down to earth. It says in Genesis 6, the angels who came down to earth and let go of their angelic state. It says in Enoch, book of Enoch, that they are locked in a place until such a day, the day of judgment. They're locked in until such a time. Enoch was actually a scribe. They came to him asking him, "Tell the fathers to have mercy on us," and write to the father, and he did, but the father said no.
Well, and that's the Nephilim, right?
The Nephilim, fallen one, yeah,
Slept with women and
yeah.
created that.
So, and the way Josephus talks about the creatures that were born, and Josephus lived in 1st century AD. So, Greek history was not far from him, and literature was Greek history in those days. So, when he describes the kind of beings that the union between the fallen angels and Nephilim, the word, people have their vision of what the word Nephilim means, but Nephilim comes from the Hebrew word lif'ol, which means to fall. You know, those fallen ones, the creatures that they gave, the union between the Nephilim and the woman. He says they gave birth to creatures that were not unlike those mythological Greek gods, monsters, animals. He said the Cyclope, maybe the Minotaur, whatever it is.
Maybe that's where they got that concept of worshiping these different gods.
Yeah. Well, you know, in
powers and strengths.
the book of Enoch, and it's amazing. He says that the people, not the angels, but those monsters, his people that were given birth to, he says in book of Enoch, they became evil spirits to trap man. The evil spirit to trap man, and the woman with whom they had sexual revelations.
Revelations.
Yeah, maybe. Must have been a revelation. Sexual relation. They became mermaids. So sirens, mermaids. It says sirens actually. Sirens are spirits in the sea, and then you have the spirits on earth. And it's funny that Enoch says evil spirits to trap man, because in the Pentateuch, Moses talks about idolatry, idols as traps for man, idols. So the evil spirit, idol traps. It's quite interesting, So
Do you think it also was the race of giants, the Nephilim? And because then there were these giants, and like you had written in one of your devotions that where do we get these giants after
the flood?
this guy named whatever held on to the outside of the ark? That was interesting. I'd never heard that before.
No, it's because there's all the giants were gone after the flood. Only Noah and his family. So where do we read about Goliath? Yeah, race of giants here, and he had sons too, who were giants, Og and Sihon.
Yeah.
Where do they come from? From Noah. So people talk about gigantism is kind of a condition people have.
Yeah.
But in Jewish Midrash, what they say is, well, it's simple. One of the giants wanted to escape the flood. So he knocked, and Noah said, no, I can't. The door is locked. I'd even lock it. Even if I wanted to, I could not let you in. God locked the door. He says, well, let me hang on to the boat, to the barge, because it was a barge, really. It was not a boat made to travel. So let me hang on to it. So, well, you do what you want. So for 100 days, I guess, because it was a long time, he stayed there.
Wasn't it more than a year? He would have starved to death.
Yeah, it would have been there was a lot of fish and probably dead animals. And
in the water. Yeah.
And then they say, I land with a little thing. They say that when, and that's again is Jewish Midrash, but it says that when Noah did his sacrifices, so he gave an offering of thanks.
It's the first thing he did.
First thing he did, the giant wanted to help him. And it was, well, I'll help you. Look, we're both on this earth, it's like, I'll help you. So, of course, this is an allegory trying to explain something else, So Noah said, okay. So the giant, he went to bring a lamb, a lion, a pig, and a monkey.
A lamb,
a lamb, a lion, a pig, and a monkey. So, and for the offering, and the Midrash goes on to say that this is why, because he had made an offering for his vine, the vine that he had grown that had gone very well, and he made wine and everything. So this was since then, when people drink a little bit of wine, they become as gentle as a lamb. And if they drink a little bit more, they become as bold as a lion. And if they drink a bit more, they become as silly as a monkey.
Pig.
They act like a pig. And if they really drink more, they act like monkeys. So.
The pig and the monkey would have been extinct.
Well, he had to take.
If they would have done that.
Yeah. Maybe he waited. Maybe they had babies.
Send one pair of
one pair,
animals.
but they might have a baby. Maybe he was.
In a year
Maybe
time, they had time to have more.
If you take a male and a female, maybe you take a pregnant one. Okay, so on this story, Shabbat Shalom, Shavuot Tov,
Shabbat.
bye-bye. Everybody say bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm going to turn this off.
Bless you.
It's really humid, huh? Okay.
So how